Welcome to today's webinar, Supporting People with Down Syndrome in Managing Their Personal Hygiene. My name is Laura Crone. I am the Project Manager for Research and Education at the Adult Down Syndrome Center in Park Ridge, Illinois. We are a healthcare clinic for adolescents and adults with Down syndrome ages 12 and older, and since opening in 1992, our healthcare providers have seen over 6,000 individuals with Down syndrome. In addition to providing patient care, we offer a variety of research and education opportunities, such as this webinar. Our presenter today is Dr. Katie Frank. Katie is an occupational therapist who has been in the field since 2001 and worked at the Adult Down Syndrome Center since 2016. Before I turn it over to Katie, I have a few reminders. The slide that you just saw was an image of our resource library. Katie will be referring to that throughout the presentation. It has over 500 resources for individuals with Down syndrome and their families and caregivers, and we encourage you to take a look. It is available free of charge. This webinar is being recorded, and the link to the recording and the slides from the webinar will be emailed to attendees within 1 week. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar, and please feel welcome to submit questions using the Q&A option in the Zoom toolbar, and you can do that throughout the webinar. And then lastly, please note that the information in this presentation is for educational purposes only and does not take the place of working with your own healthcare professionals. And Katie will be mentioning some products in this webinar, and we don't endorse or recommend them specifically. With that, I am going to hand it over to Katie Frank. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Laura. And I want to thank everyone for registering for this webinar. And I know many of you submitted questions with your registration, and many of those questions are going to be covered within the content of the webinar today. So today we really want to talk about the progression of assistance when it comes to supporting an individual with Down syndrome. We're going to really identify what personal hygiene skills need to be learned, but very much focusing on how we can support the individuals with Down syndrome completing these skills more independently. So let's begin with this progression of assistance. So there's a continuum of assistance that is needed from being dependent to independent and can really vary from skill to skill and activity to activity. So when they're dependent, they're going to need full assistance. And then as they move closer to independence, it's maximal assistance, moderate assistance, minimal assistance, prompts, supervision, and then no assistance. And I'm sure if any of your loved ones ever had occupational therapy or physical therapy, maybe even some speech therapy, you've probably seen some of these words before and maybe didn't understand what they meant. So we're going to kind of cover that today. So if someone needs full assistance or they're dependent, they need 100% physical support. So this could be someone who's incontinent and wears pull-ups and needs all the assistance in changing the pull-ups, or maybe they need to be given sponge baths, things like that when it comes to self-care. I mean, we could talk more about mobility also when it comes to this, but when we're thinking about self-care skills or hygiene, that's what full assistance might look like. Then there's maximal assistance. And this is a person that is able to requires, 75% physical support, but they can do 25% of the task on their own. And perhaps adaptive equipment or durable medical equipment may be used by the caregiver in order to assist this person. So when it comes to dressing, maybe the individual is able to put their arms through the shirt after you put it on their head, and maybe they can put their feet into their pants, but need assistance pulling them up. Or if it comes to toileting, maybe they can tell you that they need to use the restroom, but then you're going to provide assistance with getting on and off the toilet, helping them with their clothing management, maybe even assistance with wiping after a bowel movement. Perhaps they can do it if they urinate and actually need to wipe. Maybe you're going to be using a raised toilet seat or some kind of grab bar or something if they need assistance getting on and off the toilet. That would be your durable medical equipment. When it comes to moderate assistance, the person requires 50% assist, but then they can do 50% of the task on their own. You may use different modifications or adaptations to help them be more independent. And then again, the caregiver may need to use durable medical equipment for safety. So perhaps this is you set up the clothes and the individual is able to get their shirt on without help, but perhaps needs assistance with lower body dressing because when they stand to pull up, they may need help with balancing. So then you're providing that assistance. Or again, with toileting, they tell you they need to use the restroom. They may need either assistance getting on and off the toilet or helping with clothing management or assistance with wiping after a bowel movement. And then there's minimal assistance. So the person requires 25% support, but can do 75% of the task on their own. And this is often a time where a caregiver is providing hand over hand or hand under hand assistance. So when I talk about hand over hand assistance, if you're working on brushing teeth and this is the individual with Down syndrome's hand that they're holding the toothbrush with, you are then supporting their hand and guiding it and helping with brushing teeth. And if we're doing hand under hand, then you are actually holding the toothbrush and they are holding your hand, and then you're having them kind of guide you. So you may initially provide hand over hand assistance so that they can kind of understand the movement pattern, the pressure they need to provide, things like that. But then you progress to hand underhand assistance so that they're kind of like guiding you to do it. And so then you can gauge their learning and understanding and their ability to complete the task. Maybe you're providing setup when it's minimal assistance. So again, with brushing teeth, maybe if you put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, they're able to complete the rest of the task on their own. And you may also use modifications or adaptations. So we're going to show some strategies for brushing teeth, whether it's an automatic toothpaste dispenser or something that can work on a regular toothpaste that helps so that they don't have to squeeze, that it provides, pushes all the toothpaste down to the front. It's kind of like a chip clip, if you will. So things like that to help them with being more independent. And then there's prompts. And I'm sure you provide prompts every day. Some of you probably provide more prompts than you ever thought you needed to. And so there are a variety of prompts we can provide. And the first one is modeling. And so anyone can model the appropriate behavior or the skill we want them to do. But honestly, individuals with Down syndrome do best when they see themselves or someone that looks like them do it. And so you'll see in our resource library, we have a variety of videos starring individuals with Down syndrome doing some of the tasks we're going to be talking about today. And so that's great. The other thing you can do is you can take photos or take a video of your loved one doing it so that they can also just watch themselves do it. Or if it's like a certain setup you want them to have, take a photo of that so they know what that looks like. Then when it comes to gestures, it's going to be things like thumbs up or thumbs down, or maybe pointing to the water to turn it on for hand washing or brushing teeth, but you're not using words, you're just using gestures. Verbal prompts, this is when you are using words for each step. Maybe you're even praising them when they're doing what they're supposed to do. The challenging thing with verbal prompts is that it can lead to prompt dependency. So if you're using verbal prompts all the time, the individual may not even begin a task without that verbal prompt. And so it's important to then try to work on incorporating then the gestures without the words if you can, so that you can try to fade the prompt. And then if you've heard me talk before, you know I'm a huge fan of using visual supports. So these are words or pictures that tell someone what to do. I'm going to show you a variety of examples throughout this webinar, but thinking, whether it's the steps of hand washing or the steps of their shower or their morning routine, whatever it might be, it takes away from you having to provide the verbal or gestural prompt. They can just follow it on their own. So again, it helps to lead towards more independence. So when you think about hand washing, if you're going to use modeling, maybe you're going to wash your hands next to them, or have them watch the video from our resource library about how to wash hands. If you're using gestures, you might point to the faucet to turn on the water, and then you point to the soap. And again, you're not using any words when you're doing that. If you're using verbal, then you are going to say things like turn on the water, put soap in your hands, rub your hands together, right? And then if it's a visual, it's just going to be pictures of each step. Maybe it's just going to be that picture reminder that they need to wash their hands. And you don't have to do all the steps of hand washing. And oftentimes you may be using verbal and visual together. So even when you're incorporating visual supports, especially for the first time, you are probably going to also be using verbal cues and gestures. So thinking again, if it's the steps of hand washing, you're going to say, turn on the water, and you're going to point to that picture. You might even say, turn on the water, and then point to the faucet while you're also using that verbal cue so that they can kind of make those connections. And we're going to talk about learning styles and why that's important in a minute. And then there's supervision. So the individual is able to complete the task on their own, but perhaps requires supervision for safety. And then again, maybe they're going to use modifications or adaptations. So maybe they can do all the tasks of bathing on their own, but they might, um, and they can even turn the water on by themselves, but maybe they need supervision to make sure they don't fall. Or so then or you put grab bars or a shower chair in for safety. Or maybe they can do all those steps, but they need help setting the water temperature. Maybe they can shave on their own, either with a straight razor or an electric razor, but they just want supervision for safety in case they happen to cut themselves. And so that then you can help support them in learning what to do if they cut themselves. So that's supervision. And then finally, there's no assistance, right? So they're able to complete 100% of the task on their own, but also modifications and adaptations can be put into place. And that's what a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, right? So they can be independent with the support we put in place so that we don't have to be there with them. So even if there's that visual prompt, and then with that visual prompt, they don't need any other support, that can make them require no assistance, right? So it's showering on their own, including setting the water temperature correctly and washing all body parts and their hair and rinsing their hair and turning off the water and getting out of the shower and drying off appropriately. Maybe they go to the bathroom on their own and they wipe all on their own, but they're using flushable wipes. Although I do not recommend actually flushing the wipes. Not all toilet plumbing does well with flushable wipes. So even if they say they're flushable, just have them throw them away. Maybe they brush their teeth on their own, but they use an electric toothbrush instead of a manual one. And that's okay because it helps them be more thorough. So the thing is, when they need no assistance, they know when to complete the task and they don't need to be told to do it, right? Unless it's that visual prompt telling them, but it doesn't require a verbal prompt from a parent, like, oh, it's time to shower. It would just be like they know that whatever time it is, that's when they usually shower, it's time to shower, or they shower when they wake up, or they shower right before bed. They just do it without being told. So it's also important to understand how individuals with Down syndrome learn best because that helps us with modifying things so that we can teach them to be more independent. So the first thing we know is that individuals with Down syndrome are visual learners and do a learning from someone that looks like them. And we already spoke about that. So it's important to pair pictures with the spoken word. So whether it's those videos, visual supports, photos of the individual, that's going to help them best. We also know that they require simple directions, right? And they require us not to talk too much. So we want to also tell them what to do instead of what not to do. So don't be like, don't do this. Just say, brush your teeth. Even if they're not doing it exactly how you want, don't say like, don't do it that way. And the other thing is don't use contraction. So I just used don't 3 times, I think. Say something like do not, because they may not understand what that contraction means. And so again, if we're telling them do not do this, they're like, well, what am I supposed to do instead? So that's why it's important to tell them what to do instead of what not to do. So perhaps again, with brushing teeth, you can be like, I like that you put just enough toothpaste on the toothbrush, or that's a great amount of toothpaste, right? Instead of like, don't put too much toothpaste on. We also know that individuals are not as strong with their auditory memory and auditory processing and have difficulty retaining directions or information that is only presented verbally. So what can we do to support them? We want to allow adequate response time. And I'm sure you've thought of this, but it can be really hard, especially because many of us talk pretty fast. So it's important that when we give them directions, we do it in a way that they have time to process. So even if it's like you have the count of three to get your shoes on, and we're like one, two, three, they're still like on the, you're counting to three for me to do what? Right? And so it's one, two. I know this seems incredibly slow, doesn't it? Three. Or if we're giving them a list of things to do, it's important that we say it slow because they may either only do the first step and then you're like, why aren't you doing anything else? Or they only do that last step because that's the thing they heard and were able to process because you said the other, two things before that too quickly. Um, And this also goes with the fact that individuals with Down syndrome have fewer short-term memory channels. And so we want to break down tasks into smaller steps. And we're going to talk about activity analysis. But you might say in the morning, all right, get ready for school. Okay, you know what getting ready for school means, but that's pretty abstract. And we know individuals with Down syndrome don't do well with things that abstract. They need things to be concrete. So we know that they may need to use the toilet, wash their face, brush their teeth, get dressed, eat breakfast. So that's 5 steps right there. But each one of those steps also requires multiple steps. So thinking about just the brushing their teeth, they need to get their toothbrush and toothpaste, open the toothpaste, squeeze the toothpaste onto the toothbrush. Maybe they rinse before, and then they start brushing their teeth, right? Um, that's a lot of steps. Or you think about at bedtime, get ready for bed, but really that requires using the toilet, changing into their pajamas, taking medication. Again, all of those using the toilet, depending on what they need to do. I mean, they might need all the steps of like, they have to change out of their clothes, they need to sit on the toilet, they need to wipe, they need to wash their hands, then they get dressed. Well, what pajamas are they going to choose? Are they already out for them? Do they have to select them? And then taking medication. So we take for granted all of the small steps that are required to take on one activity, but we have to understand what that means so that we can best support our loved ones with Down syndrome. And then the last thing is that they need to have a regulated sensory system. And again, we have a ton of webinars on sensory processing, but it's important to provide sensory input, and we're going to cover it very briefly today. The other thing that's really important, though, is that if you've met one person with Down syndrome, congratulations, you've met one person with Down syndrome, right? Because Down syndrome is just one piece of the individual. And in learning, it really can depend on the individual's preferences. So, especially when it comes to self-care, do they have a preference for a certain hygiene product or clothing? Is there a certain time of day that they prefer to complete an activity? It's all really about personal choice. We also know that we all have areas of strength and areas of growth. So our abilities can impact how we learn. And then what is motivating for the individual? Is independence the motivation they need in order to do these skills? Or do they actually really enjoy having the company of someone? So they're like, just do it for me, or I like you to be in the room when I do it. Is there a reward that could be motivating for them, like time on a tablet? Their living situation can impact learning. Are they living in a family home? Are they living in a group home or some other residential setting? So perhaps in the family home, they're just naturally getting more support because the family's used to caring for them. Where in a group home or residential setting, they're kind of expected to have some of these skills. And then lastly, it depends on the learning style. So there are individuals who prefer to learn things by what they see. So they're more visual learners. They prefer to hear things. So they're more auditory learners, or they prefer to do things. They're more motor learners. And we all have our more preferred learning style. And some of us like a combination of all of them. So an individual with Down syndrome, while we say they are visual learners, you've also heard me say sometimes they need to hear things with those verbal prompts. We also know individuals with Down syndrome need a lot of practice and repetition. That's motor learning. So we have to remember this and provide those opportunities when teaching all skills, but especially self-care skills. So again, what works for most? Again, commonalities. This is not going to be for every individual, but videos and visuals, modeling, they're very good at imitating what they see. They're going to need a lot of repetition and practice in order to learn these skills. They need the social support, so that good social circle to teach and provide guidance in order to learn these skills. I mentioned this before, it's important to be as concrete as possible. Gray areas are challenging and things need to be black and white. So toileting at home is different than toileting in public, right? Because we're telling them that toileting is a private activity and at home it's a private space. But at school or at the park district, those are public restrooms. It can be very, very confusing. So we need to help them generalize these skills across different environments. And then it's also helpful to establish a routine because in establishing this routine or groove, as I'm sure many of you have heard us talk about, it can help that individual complete a task more independently. And it's really great until something happens and that routine can't occur. Perhaps they run out of a product, or maybe they're even in a new environment. Think about when you travel or your loved one goes away to a camp. There are, things that we have to consider when it comes to these. And we actually did just do a webinar on like preparing for camp and travel and things like that, that is in our resource library if you want to learn about a variety of things to consider when you need to leave the home. And, things like now, especially if they're at camp, they may be showering in a public shower. They might have an individual shower stall, but that's very different, and the setup is different. So they need to practice these skills in a new environment. And again, it's that generalization of skills. So I talked about breaking tasks down into individual steps. So this is called activity analysis or task analysis, and this is really the basis of what occupational therapists do. This is like one of the very first things we learn in OT school. And so we have to think about when we're looking at a task or an activity, what um, what what does the activity entail when it comes to the fine motor skills needed, the motivation required, the sequencing of the task? The other thing is the task may even be different depending on which caregiver is supporting the individual. Mom may dress them differently than dad, or bedtime routines different between mom and dad. And then, oh my gosh, they're at their grandparents' house. It's completely different, right? That's important to understand. And then, like I said, even with these steps, like gathering new or clean clothes, though that task can be broken down into even smaller steps. So we really need to think about supporting an individual with their self-care skills. We think about breaking down these tasks into the simplest steps to have them be successful. So for instance, with getting dressed, generally, they need to get their clean clothes, get rid of their dirty clothes. Where do they put them? They need to put on their undergarments, whatever that is for that person. But you need to be like, put on your underwear, put on your bra or your cami, not just put on your undergarments. Right? What are they going to put on their lower body? What order do they put things in on? Same with their shirt. Is it an overhead shirt? Does it have buttons? I mean, things you have to consider. So when it comes to practicing these tasks, we can do things like forward chaining or backward chaining. So if you think about buttoning a shirt, and honestly, I do not care if a person with Down syndrome is ever able to button their shirt. There's so many other things we can do to help them be independent with dressing and not wear button shirts. But for that task in particular, you can think about if you're doing forward chaining, you're going to have them do like maybe they'll put the shirt on and maybe do like the first button and then you do the rest, right? Or they start the task but you help them finish until that you can build up. Okay, we know they're good with one button, but they're going to get frustrated with the rest. Or if it's backward chaining, you do everything but like the last button. And then they do that last button. And then you work backwards. So then it's the next time they do the last two buttons and the last three, things like that. So you can help them be successful and feel like they're, proud to do these things if you're helping them be more engaged in the activity. And then, like I said, visual support's huge. Why are they so important? It's because they help to provide or establish structure and routine. And we just know that all of us function better, typically, if there's something that we have expectations, we know what to expect. Visuals also can provide memory and comprehension strategies to support independence. So again, because we know they have those short-term memory channels, that's why visuals can help. It tells them the steps they need to do until it becomes routine. Visuals also lessen the battle between the parent or caregiver and that person with Down syndrome, right? So that visual becomes the bad guy. It's not the person asking for something to be done. Mom or sister is no longer nagging. It really can lessen the power struggle. But the other great thing about visuals is that it can provide consistency between caregivers so that the bedtime routine is the bedtime routine no matter who is helping the individual. So it helps everyone be on the same page. Visuals can also teach or show what to do, which is how we help them establish independence. It can provide motivation. So if we have to do a reward chart in order to help them uh, know, like, you do this, then you earn this, or it can be first then, right? First, you're going to shower. We know that's not your preferred thing, but then you get time on the tablet, or you get your bedtime snack, or whatever it might be. It provides opportunity to offer choice. So we know that lots of us like to be able to make choices for ourselves. And it's no different for individuals with Down syndrome, although I found that many individuals with Down syndrome don't have the opportunity to make choices because they're constantly being told what to do. So it can be today's a shower day. Do you want to shower in the morning or at night? Or we need to shower. Do you want to wear this or this after you shower? Things like that. Having them be able to make more choices and incorporating that throughout the day can be very motivating for them. And then again, the visuals are going to help eliminate that need to process instructions auditorily. So it's not get your shoes on, get your coat on, go out, get in the car for school. The picture says that, so they don't have to try to process that, and you don't have to speak so slowly. It helps everyone with time management. And then finally, I mentioned our sensory system. So I want you to think about your sensory system being like electrical wiring. And here the wiring is intact and the light remains on. Now I'm going to let you know, and I'm sure if many of you have seen this before, my next slide has a flashing light on it. So if that's triggering for you or you have seizures, please look away for just about 15 seconds and I promise I will change the slide. So here, there's that kink in the wire. It's going to essentially cause the lights to flicker. And so I'm going to change the slide now if you want to look. So that means that the messages aren't being sent from our brain to where they need to go in the rest of the body. And so when this happens, it can impact behavior. And we might see verbal outbursts or physical aggression or slowing down or shutting down. And this happens a lot when it comes to self-care. And our sensory system can impact our ability to complete self-care skills because think about like the sound of the clippers or scissors for haircuts, and haircuts can be challenging maybe because of that, or the feeling of water on their face, or tags on their clothes, or the smell of certain hygiene products. All of this is part of our sensory system, and it can impact our ability to be independent. So that's all kind of the background information. Hopefully you guys are all still with me. But now we're going to really go in to the skills we need and strategies to support independence. So what is personal hygiene? When we've done groups here or we have a resource on this, we tell individuals with Down syndrome, it's how you care for your body. And it's important because if we have good hygiene, people are going to want to be around us, right? If we're smelly or wearing dirty clothes, people might not want to be friends with us. It's going to help us with our independence and it helps us stay healthy. And we have this, like these are some of the different hygiene products we might use. And so then we talk about what each of those is for. And we can play like matching games with it. We've done a variety of things, but it's important for them to understand what products are used during personal hygiene. We also have this personal hygiene chart in our resource library. There's this version exactly as it is, but there are all the tools in there for you to create your own personal hygiene chart. So perhaps the person doesn't brush their teeth every morning and night. They just do it in the morning. You wouldn't necessarily need those photos. Or maybe They, only shave certain number of days a week, or nail care is only once a month or whatever. And so then you can identify that they don't have to do things every day. Maybe they don't take a bath or shower every day. They do it 3 days a week. And so then you can even move that. You keep the take bath or shower on the left, but you print off additional ones and put them on the days they're supposed to do it, instead of like marking things out. So just something that you can kind of individualize for your loved one or use it as is. So let's first talk about brushing teeth. And there are some challenges that I've heard. I mean, there could be more than this, but individuals just don't want to do it. They don't like the feeling of it. Maybe they don't like the taste of the toothpaste. Mostly it's just they're not able to clean their teeth thoroughly, but it could also be because they have decreased fine motor skills, where there's just too many steps to follow, or they use too much or too little toothpaste. So, what are some things we can do to support this? One could be to use an electric toothbrush. You could also use a three-sided toothbrush, which is pictured here. And so the toothbrush has a left, a right, and a top. So then if they're just brushing like normal, then they're getting all sides of their teeth at once, instead of having to do a lot of the wrist rotation. And then a lot of times a pediatric sized toothbrush is really effective just because an individual with Down syndrome, their mouth is so small that they don't need a big toothbrush head. You can have a playlist in order to brush your teeth long enough. So, like, they have a favorite song, they brush their teeth for the entire length of that song. Or this is also pictured, there are toothbrush and hand washing timers. So you can put that next to your sink and they just press the tooth, and then I think the light stays on for as long as you're supposed to brush your teeth. And when the light goes off, you're done brushing your teeth. You can use a visual support to remember each step. And again, we do have that in our resource library. And again, we have it with a manual toothbrush, with an electric toothbrush, if you keep the water on, if you turn the water off. For flossing, using a water pick or even those floss picks can be helpful. I do know someone had put in a question saying that even the floss picks can be hard. So I wonder if it's even trying to build up the handle, because maybe it's the handle's too small. So maybe wrapping something around the handle of the floss pick so they just have a little bit more surface area to hold on to. Just a good reminder is mouthwash in addition to, not instead of brushing teeth, but a lot of individuals might have a harder time like swishing and spitting. They want to swallow, so you can also just not use mouthwash. And then using something like an automatic toothpaste dispenser. So that's the first picture where it's kind of like an automatic soap dispenser. You put your toothpaste brush under there, the toothpaste comes down, you can brush your teeth. Or the other picture is the one of kind of like the chip clip that you can use to kind of push the toothpaste to the front of the tube so that they don't have to squeeze so hard. Again, those are going to take away a lot of the fine motor tasks that you need, in order to brush your teeth. So here again are some of the examples, the visual supports of the steps of brushing teeth. And again, some people do it differently, but we tried to put a variety in there. It can also give you ideas if you wanted to print it out and kind of even simplify it more. We have a video about how to brush your teeth, starring our dear friend Bridget, who works in a dental office. So she has all the tools and supplies, and she has a variety of ways she teaches about how to brush your teeth. But we're not going to watch the video today, so I apologize. But it's in our resource library. So let's talk about toilet hygiene. There were many questions about toilet hygiene. And it's a hard thing wiping after a bowel movement. So one thing that we hear as a challenge is just difficulty with toilet training. And this is even, adolescents and some adults may not be fully toilet trained. And so it's a challenging thing. And what this is because is our interoceptive system. So that's one of our senses. We actually have 8 senses. So not just the sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, but we also have our proprioceptive system, our vestibular system, and our interoceptive system. So again, I have a whole webinar on sensory processing, but interoception is our ability to like feel things within our body. So one of the difficulties with toilet training is not knowing that they actually have to use the restroom. But the way to do that is to practice mindfulness. It's very challenging for so many people, but it is something that can be addressed. Unable to wipe their bottom thoroughly or at all, difficulty sequencing the toileting routine, too distracted to use the toilet, so maybe they have accidents because they're too um, in like they're on their iPad playing games and then they just kind of forget and so they go to the bathroom, or even using too much or too little toilet paper. So these flushable moist wipes can really help. Um, you may be having them check in the mirror. Using a toileting aid, so I'm saying this, but honestly, the toilet aid and the bidet are great for at home. But then when you think about hygiene, even though there are like bidets on the go, then they would have to carry that with them, like in a bag or backpack. And then what happens if it gets dirty and then they're putting it back in their bag or backpack? They are great because like even the toilet aid, so what it does, it looks like tongs. You wrap the toilet paper around there and it kind of extends your arm, which is great for individuals with Down syndrome who have shorter arms, smaller hands, and many have a little extra weight on them. And so it makes it harder for them to reach. Uh, but honestly, for community use, that can be really challenging. Um, so one thing you can also do is put them on a toileting schedule. So every 2 hours they're going to the bathroom, whether they know they have to or not, to just try to get them into a routine. We want to teach them how to wipe, and I'm going to kind of show you an example on the next slide. Some people just shower after having a bowel movement, which again is great if they're having bowel movements at home. If they use too much toilet paper or too little, maybe you already have, like, you don't have the roll of toilet paper that they have unlimited access to. You can have like 4 or 5 um, squares of toilet paper together, and then that's just what they grab to use. Uh, it's also kind of important to make sure that you have like good toilet paper, like you're going to use the 2 ply, maybe not the 1 ply, because the 1 ply, like their fingernails could go through that. And then all of a sudden they might have feces under their nails, right? So if they have, like maybe Charmin strong toilet paper or something like that, it might make it a little easier for them. And it's just going to be easier for them if they do apply a lot of pressure to make sure that they're not also getting dirty in the meantime. But when it comes to teaching how to wipe, this is just a photo I found. I do it a little differently. But I mean, this is obviously with little kids, and this is a teacher, and she put balloons on the back of a chair. What I like to do first is I even use tennis balls and I work on like just reaching for behind them to see if they even have that range of motion. And then obviously, when you're doing this, if they're reaching and they're sitting, that's still not where they're supposed to be wiping. So this is the other challenge when it comes to toilet hygiene is that it's super abstract. You're telling them wipe your butt. So they might wipe their butt cheek and they're like, I'm doing what you're telling me to do, but that's not where they need to wipe, right? And so if they can get to the tennis ball, then I do smaller balls, just to see if they can again reach and get that motor pattern down. And then you can even like while they're dressed, put little stickers on their clothing, like along the seam of their pants. Or if if it's you and they're at home, you can do it along their underwear. I don't do that in therapy, but then they have to reach into basically like the seam of their underwear or pants or their butt crack, essentially, and get all the pieces. And so then they kind of get that idea of where they're supposed to wipe. And so that can make it easier. Um, for some, standing up to wipe is easier than trying to sit and shift on the toilet. Um, I mean, you can try wiping from the front instead of the back. Obviously, there's a whole nother set of challenges with that, especially for females. But those are just some strategies you can try to use. You can also say things, especially once you know they get the idea of where they're supposed to wipe, or this is a great time for you to provide that hand over hand assistance, and maybe hand under hand. Um, but they have to wipe until the toilet paper's clean, right? And so we do have visual supports where maybe you just say you wipe 4 times, whether or not you need it. But again, they have to know where to wipe because if they're just wiping their butt cheek 4 times, it's not doing anything. I've also had a family who puts like for the females puts like a pad or like an extra long pad or panty liner in the underwear in case she happens to smear, then at least it's going on that and it makes it so that not, her underwear is not ruined, or it might also help with the scent in case she is out in the community. I mean, that's another kind of modification that could be used. But individuals with Down syndrome can learn to wipe, but it is very challenging. It is not uncommon for me to hear that they're not able to do it when I ask families. So again, here are just a variety of visual supports that you could use. Again, the using the toilet for boys and girls is in our resource library, but here's one that kind of shows, where you wipe. The toilet paper is dirty. You need to wipe until the toilet paper is clean. I may need to wipe 4 times. Things like that. You just need to tell them because, again, they're not going to be good with problem solving. So you say wipe, they do. Whether the toilet paper is clean or dirty, they're going to think they're finished. Um, and so those are things we have to consider when working on toilet hygiene. So as many questions as there were about toileting, that's about all I have for you. But I'm sure someone's going to come up with a question to ask me at the end. So let's move on to showering, because I actually find that there's way more challenges with showering. Whether it's them not wanting to take a bath or shower, there's just too many steps to remember. They're not cleaning thoroughly. They take too long of showers. They may just stand in the shower and let the water run. They need assistance with the shampoo, conditioner, or soap dispensers. Maybe they don't lather their shampoo in their hair or rinse their hair thoroughly. They don't want water or soap on their face. They're not able to control the water temperature. They have difficulty getting into or out of the tub, even if they're taking a shower, just that stepping in or out. And they have decreased endurance standing in the shower. So, what are some things we can do? You can use visual supports, which I'll show you. You can use timers or playlists. We actually worked with someone who I thought this was like the best idea ever, is that because he showered too long, they had a playlist for him, and within the playlist, they were able to be like, time to wash your body, and then later it's time to wash your hair. Like they were putting those verbal prompts in there, so that they didn't have to physically be present. You can wear goggles or visors to keep water out of the eyes or off their face. And they do make, I mean, these are obviously kid size, but they do make them for adults. And then, honestly, a lot of individuals with Down syndrome, their heads are a little smaller anyway, or can be. So a pediatric size may work. I really like to use pump bottles for shampoo, conditioner, and body wash, and then even label them. This is really great because one, they don't have to squeeze. Two, you can tell them how much to use. You need two pumps of shampoo. You need one pump of body wash, whatever it is. And you can, again, provide those reminders on the bottles. But using a push bottle, a pump bottle, is a lot easier with fine motor skills. Using a long-handled sponge or loofah to get their back or to get other areas that they can't reach. Again, it just helps them extend the length of their arm. A fogless mirror is really great in the shower. I know some people use them for shaving, but this can be to help them see with the shampoo is if they've covered it all over their head. And then when they rinse, they can see if they still have any shampoo in their hair. You can also use a plastic cup to rinse hair if they don't like the water in their eyes. You can use tear-free shampoo or like even that 3-in-1 soap. So like they can have, you only need one bottle of it so that it doesn't matter what they're using it for. It's just all in one pump bottle. When it comes to the temperature of the water, you might want to label hot and cold faucets with pictures, or you can also, even if it's not the single faucet, you can mark it with nail polish. So in this top picture, you can see that red line. Imagine that's like nail polish, and that's like where the arrow matches up so that they know that this is where the faucet needs to be for the correct water temperature. But what's really great, this next one, I found it on Amazon. I've never used it though, but it is a shower head that changes color based on the water temperature, and it's pretty. Some are relatively inexpensive, so that might be a good option. That, let's say green is the correct temperature. Um, you just wait till the water's green, and it doesn't actually turn the water green. It's just like you can see the pebbles in there just change it a little bit, but and then the shower head actually changes colors as well. You might want to consider medical equipment like a handheld shower head, which I think is a great thing for individuals. It can help so that they can wash their butt better. It helps them if they don't want uh, water in their eyes when they're rinsing their hair. It can also help for someone who is aging because as we've seen individuals with Down syndrome age, and if they develop Alzheimer's, it's almost like their world becomes like macular degeneration does to our vision. Their world just kind of becomes smaller, and so they become scared to shower because they don't know where the water is coming from. So a handheld shower head can help with that. Maybe a shower chair or a transfer tub bench can be helpful. So a shower chair just sits in the shower or tub, whereas if you have a tub with a shower curtain, you might need a transfer tub bench so that two of the legs and like a little platform are outside the tub. The person can sit down and swing their legs in and then scoot over if they aren't able to like lift their legs up and step into the tub. Having grab bars is always a great option. Um, you can use a comb or even a scalp scrubber to help spread the shampoo through their hair better. If they have trouble tilting their head back, maybe you put a picture of like their favorite celebrity crush or maybe their boyfriend or girlfriend if they have one, kind of up so that they know to look at the picture so that they can tilt their head back to rinse the shampoo out of their hair. Using dry shampoo on a shower or on a day where they don't have to shower, or there's even these showerless hair washing caps that again you can get on Amazon. I'm sure you can get them other places. This is just where I was searching for these things. Um, so it's really great. I don't know how it works, but I've heard wonderful things about this shampoo cap. So you don't need water, you don't need to rinse, you just put the cap on, you kind of do like rub it in and then you're supposed to be good to go. And again, I know that's really great as someone ages and maybe isn't able to get in and out of the shower or if they're in the hospital, things like that. So those are some of my quick strategies. Here's some of our other resources on it, whether it's creating the visual support for the shower routine. It can look different ways. And then we have a whole resource just on bathing and showering tips. And most of the things I talked about are in there. There's a few other things, but then some things that we're going to be updating that resource now that we've done this webinar. So that's my thing on showering. Just for sake of time, I'm going to keep going because I still have a bunch to tell you all. With grooming, whether it's not wanting to brush hair, not tolerating haircuts, maybe they can brush their hair, but they don't brush it in the back. They don't know how to put their hair in a ponytail or have trouble. Not wanting to have their nails cut. They don't know the steps to shaving. Maybe they don't sweat, so they don't want or feel like they need to wear deodorant. So what are some good strategies for this? Maybe using a hair clip instead of a scrunchie or hair tie, because again, it might just be a lot fewer steps. They just have to be able to squeeze the um, the clip to put it in instead of working on the wrist rotation and the fine motor skills to use a hair tie. Using a mirror again or a multiple view mirror so that they can see the back of their hair, whether it's putting it in the ponytail or even brushing it. If they're sensitive to brushing hair, maybe using a no-pull brush. Combing hair when wet is also really effective, especially if it gets a lot of knots in it. You know, we encourage them to brush their hair every day. Maybe it's using conditioner so that it's easier to brush hair and it doesn't hurt so much. Again, a whole resource on tips for washing and rinsing hair in the shower that can be helpful. And then we do have a video, again, that we're not going to watch today, but about how to put your hair into a ponytail with fewer fine motor steps. So that can be really helpful. Um, when it comes to cleaning or cutting nails, I know that can be challenging. So, making sure prompting them to clean under their nails when they wash their hands. It's much easier to cut nails when they are wet, either after just soaking them or bathing. So, keeping that in mind. A lot of our individuals maybe don't want a family member to cut their nails, but they're good if someone else does it. So, having them every once in a while get a manicure or pedicure. And then there's also some adaptable equipment that you can use. So whether it's a rotating nail clipper, which is like the one at the top, you can move it around, but it also has a larger base, so you don't have to also like work on stabilizing it in your hand. Kind of same with the bottom one. But the one in the middle on the far right is an automatic nail clipper so that they can just put their nail in and it kind of clips. We have one here at the clinic that we've tried. I mean, it's great for fingernails or nails that are not super thick. So a lot of our guys have really thick and fungus on their toenails, so it's not going to be great for that. but it can help them be more independent. There really is no risk for them getting cut using the automatic nail clipper, but there is maintenance to it, like making sure you clean out the nails and make sure that the blades are sharp enough and things like that. But all of that can help with nails. Then with shaving, um, it using an electric razor instead of a straight razor can help. Using the mirror to really help make sure that they can see what they're doing. You can just prompt them to feel their face to make sure, like for or their underarms, that they've gotten all the hair, and just reminding them to go slow. And then when it comes to shaving legs, making sure they sit down, that they're going to be gentle and they don't push too hard on the razor, that they shave down their leg, that they go slow. But you can even use Nair or other hair remover cream. But we also have a ton of individuals that don't shave their legs or their armpits. And then maybe they go to a barber and get shaved their face. And that's fine, right? That's still helping them be independent in whatever they want to be. And it's not the end of the world if they're not shaving on their own. But we do have a video in our resource library about how to shave with an electric razor that we would encourage you to check out. There's another resource. There are a variety of videos about ADLs in our resource library that we didn't create. And so there are a couple other ones about shaving in that as well. So again, when it comes to deodorant, maybe having them use a spray deodorant or stick or roll on instead of the powder, providing that just reminder of visual support. Don't forget your deodorant today. Using unscented products, especially if they're sensitive to smells, using clear or dry products so that they're not getting the residue on their clothing, a visual about how much to use or model. This is another opportunity where you can do that hand over hand or hand under hand. And again, we know many of our individuals don't sweat, so they may not feel the need for deodorant, but it's probably not a bad um, routine to get to include in your hygiene. Washing hands can be tricky. So again, visual supports, videos, pictures, whether it's the steps of hand washing or just that reminder. Again, using that timer. So this one, you just click for the hand washing, the light's on for the length of time that you wash your hands and it turns off when you're done. So that's a visual timer. You can just set a timer, again, have a playlist. And we do have another video about washing hands. So Jeff tells us all the steps of washing hands. So they can watch that video. You can also actually have them, you can video them washing their hands again, and then they can watch that if they need reminders too. So haircuts can be really hard for so many individuals. So maybe it's good to just visit the salon first without the expectation of getting their hair cut so that they know what the environment looks like. They get to meet the person who's going to cut their hair. Maybe they sit in the chair, but then that's it. Maybe they actually get to like see the tools they're going to be used. Maybe they watch you get your hair cut. Something like that can make it a little easier. Using visual support, so whether it's a story about getting your hair cut, a schedule, like this is just on, you're gonna go to school and then we're gonna go get ice cream and then you're gonna get a haircut and then we're gonna go home and play and then you're gonna have dinner or whatever it might be. Um, First, then, again, this is a great visual to use for a non-preferred activity. So first is the non-preferred activity and then is the more preferred activity or the motivating activity for them. Consider the time of the day for the appointment. So maybe they do really well in the morning, so then you're going to go on a Saturday morning. But then you can also think, oh my gosh, Saturday mornings are super crowded there. I wonder if there's a place that does it on or on Sunday mornings, or I wonder if someone would let us come in before school on Wednesday. Um, or it's not about the time of day, it is about how busy it is. So then you talk with the person, can we come in when it's just going to be us because it's too overwhelming with all these other people. You can use sensory-friendly clippers. So that's the picture on the far right. So it makes scissors into clippers so you don't have that like buzzing sound. So you can try that as well. You maybe just avoid using a blow dryer if they don't like the sound or the feeling of the heat. You can provide sensory input before, during, and after. So before you go to get their haircut, you do some sensory activity that they like. Maybe during, the apron or the cape they wear has a little bit of weight to it if they like things that are weighted, or you can provide some distractions during. and then after again. So now that they've done it, they might feel worked up again. You're going to do something to help calm them. You might use a timer. So these are visual timers. There's timers on apps you can use. That's what the Duck is, or the other one's just the time timer. That's a physical timer. You can use a cooking timer, just a regular timer on your phone. So they know like this is how long they have to sit there for. And whatever gets done in that time is what gets done. And again, provide any distraction. So if they are going to tolerate it by watching a video on their iPad or playing a game, let them do it if it's going to make it easier for everybody. Individuals with Down syndrome tend to have dry skin, just naturally. A lot of times it's because they don't drink enough water. A lot of them also don't like the feelings of lotions or creams on their skin. So what are some things you can do? Use more of a moisturizing cream daily. You can tell them to rub it in until they can't see it or it's not slippery. There's a variety of wet lotions, so lotions you can put on your skin like right after you shower that you spray on, or just spray lotions if they don't like the feeling of other lotions, perhaps wearing gloves while they put them on. You might need a visual to show them where to put their lotion. Um, maybe they need to put lotion on their hands more than once a day, especially in the winter, and having a reminder for that. I mean, there's so many different things. We do have a video about how to manage dry skin, and then another video another resource about a variety of different lotion options that can be helpful. And again, I mean, these are not all things that we've tried. But just some tips based on some sensory things or just experiences that we've had here at the clinic. Then there's menstrual hygiene management. So this is only going to apply to half of, you that are here that have females with Down syndrome in your families, but lack of fine motor skills to use pads or tampons can be a challenge. Not knowing when to change menstrual hygiene products, not tolerating the sensation of pads or tampons, not remembering to move tampons, and maybe not even knowing when to expect their period to begin. So we can use some different strategies. There are a variety of visual supports in the resource library about getting your period and managing your period and your period hygiene products. Period panties have been a wonderful invention. If you don't use them already and period hygiene is a challenge, I highly recommend it. There are a variety of different brands. They come in different absorbencies. They are not super inexpensive, but they do make life a little easier. There are also period absorbent bathing suits now in case your loved one isn't able to swim when they're on their period. That could be a great option. You can use timers, so like they can have like a notification on their watch that goes off every certain amount of time to remind them to go check and change their menstrual hygiene product. Um, I also tell them you can do it at like around meal times. So they change it when they wake up, when they have lunch, when they have dinner, when they go to bed. There's different apps in order to track your cycles. These are just a couple of them, but that can help them kind of anticipate when they may start their period. But again, the period hygiene underwear is really great because you can have them wear it for days before leading up to it, just in case if they're not as regular as someone else. And again, here's some resources about when to change your menstrual hygiene product, and then specifically if they use tampons, they use pads, or they use period panties. And with tampons, I don't know very many of our patients that use them, and if they do, they need help, but it is very possible to do it. It takes a little bit of learning on everyone's part, but there are, things to do to help with that. And then some of the last things are like dressing and clothing selection challenges. So maybe they're not able to manipulate fasteners, they're putting their clothes on backwards or inside out. They wear inappropriate clothing for the weather. They don't tolerate certain clothing fabric, or they have this issue where they have to change for gym class and they're having trouble doing it. Maybe they're missing gym altogether because it takes too long to change. So what are some great strategies? Clothes without fasteners. We all wear them, so why shouldn't they wear them? I think it's wonderful. And I don't think that that's an issue. I do know that many of our individuals have trouble just because of their height, finding clothes that fit or having, if they need dress pants or what that might look like. But overall, clothes without fasteners, I'm 100% on board with. Just remove clothes that are not in season from their wardrobe. So take them out of their dresser, take them out of their closet so that they only have options for what's appropriate for that season. For the most part. I mean, obviously, especially in Chicago, we may have a warm winter day or a cold summer day. So you wouldn't want to put everything away, but like Uggs, for instance, I know that a lot of girls here wear Uggs in the winter, and then we still see them wearing their Uggs well into like July. You know what? We just say, if the Uggs aren't there for them to see, then maybe they won't put them on. You can also label drawers with photos of what's inside, so that can help them know what they need to put on. And I'll show you an example of that, a visual support for what to wear. Maybe you lay out the clothes the night before to save time in the morning. If there's a sensory issue, there's a ton of clothes without seams and tags now. Um, for bras, you can use sports bras, you can use front clasp bras, but you can also always keep a regular back clasp bra fastened and then put it on like a t-shirt so that they don't have to worry about the fine motor skills. And then with gym class, you really want to consider like what steps that they have the most difficulty with and try to avoid it. So if they have trouble with their shirt, can they just wear it underneath so they only take off the top layer and already have their gym shirt on? Is it a privacy issue? So can they change in a stall? Do they need to change at all? Can you just ask, like, can they just wear what they have on? Um, when you're working on putting shirts on, um, maybe it's putting the shirt over the head and then their arms in instead of their arms in and then over the head. Just trying to, like, again, break tasks down and see where the challenge is for them. Maybe you label the front of their clothing with something of interest, like on the inside of like a photo of a celebrity or their favorite color so that they know to look for that and make sure that's in the front because maybe the tag or the label just doesn't stand out to them so that they don't put things on backwards. And then here again are some of the resources we have in our resource library. So you can see the picture of like labeling the dresser. You can also do this with like when I get dressed, I will put on and selecting what they put on. This is also a individualized resource in our resource library. But you can uh then take like, oh, I will put on my underwear. So then they look for the underwear picture on their drawer, right? And then same with their bra and, things like that. So that can help them match and be more independent. Again, so many shoes that don't tie, but if they want to learn how to tie their shoes and take out the fine motor component, we have a resource in our resource library about that. Um, and then a variety of adaptive clothing that really can increase independence, especially when fine motor skills are an issue. Ooh, so I did get through it. I was hoping to get it in under an hour, pretty close to it. But what did we learn today? We learned that individuals with Down syndrome may need a variety of assistance with self-care, but assistance can vary from task to task. That it's really important to break down tasks into simpler steps because that can increase independence, and that's really what OTs are known for. Your OT at school is probably not going to help with this, so that's where I would consider looking at getting a private-based OT. You want to consider sensory needs and how that can impact self-care. Visual supports can be used to support independence with self-care tasks, but overall, with time, practice, and maybe modifications, teaching how the individual learns best, a person with Down syndrome can be independent with a variety of self-care and hygiene tasks. So with that, here's my contact information. I mean, you can find it on the website too. You're always welcome to email me with any questions. If you have questions about resources, there is also in the resource library a contact us button. But with that, do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Katie, for sharing all that wonderful information. We do have some questions, and I'm going to start it off with one about motivation. And we've received several questions around that topic. Do you have suggestions related to how to motivate individuals who really just don't want to do self-care tasks?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies. I feel like there's something that motivates everybody. So using that, unfortunately, a lot of times, food is the motivating factor, and I hate using that. Um, but perhaps what you could do in order to think if you really needed to use food is you find like a small reward. So you build a reward system. And it's if they, let's say showering's the issue. They shower the day they're supposed to, again with the like the chore chart we've created, the personal hygiene chart. They do it that day, they get a small immediate reward, whatever that might be. But then that ultimate reward, if they're supposed to do it 4 times that week, if they do it 4 times that week, then they get to go out to eat at a restaurant. And then, something like that. So like it's not necessarily hurting because maybe they love to eat out at restaurants, but you're not doing it every time they do the skill, but it's like the big reward. Or um, if it's time on their tablet, they don't get to use their tablet until they do the task. So especially in the morning, I hear like they can do everything, they just move slow. So maybe the motivating thing is they get time on their tablet before school or work or day program if they get everything else done that they're supposed to do. So sometimes that can help. If nothing is motivating them, uh, then it's something that maybe they just won't be independent and we'll have to look at that progression of assistance and maybe they're always going to need a little bit of help with something.
Thank you. I also received some questions related to toilet hygiene, and you said that that's just a really challenging task for a lot of individuals with Down syndrome. But is there one strategy that you think works best for individuals whose arms are just too short to reach behind?
I mean, so the other advantage is that individuals with Down syndrome are highly flexible. So really that shouldn't be a problem unless they're overweight. So it's really just having them learn how they have to move their body in order to get to where they need to reach. But in theory, if that's still an issue, it's going to be using one of those toilet aids or using a bidet. Um, but again, that's not going to be helpful in every setting if they're not carrying it with them. Or if they are, then it's a hygiene issue. And unless they're also learning how to keep those products clean out in the community. I mean, I wonder if it's just for bowel movements, if there's a way to like make sure they're only having bowel movements at home. I mean, the other thing that so many, and I think I said this, that so many of our individuals do when they have a bowel movement at home, they just automatically get in the shower. And so, I mean, it's like the bidet, but they have to get totally undressed. But it's the same kind of concept. I'm a huge fan of bidets. You don't have to have a whole bidet toilet. You can just get a bidet toilet seat to go on your current toilet, but oftentimes you will need a plumber probably to help install, or you have to make sure that there's a plug. So maybe even an electrician. Um, but I mean, that's my number one recommendation. Again, that's not going to go everywhere with them if you have it at home, but a bidet makes a world of difference.
Thank you. We received a question about where you can purchase the automated nail trimmer, and I know there's a company called Clip Different that makes them. Have you also found them on Amazon?
They are. There are a variety of different ones on Amazon.
Great. Thank you. Um, do you have a specific toothpaste dispenser that you recommend? There are so many to choose from.
I don't. And a lot of times this is really just trial and error and how they work. Um, I would always start with the least expensive because you also never know if your loved one's gonna want to use it. It might not be motivating for them to use it. So I always say don't spend very much money to see if it even helps.
Thank you. Are there some common triggers or clues that help to identify when sensory issues are complicating things? Like when that rope begins to fray or unravel, like the visual you shared.
Uh, yes, but it varies from person to person. So I mean, So there's a whole uh, webinar on sensory processing that might be really helpful so that you can, because it's not just with self-care skills. I mean, so I also do a presentation on is it sensory or is it behavior? Because we tend to see like a change in behavior or a maladaptive behavior or negative behavior when it really could be sensory processing. So, because that's the thing there, I was trying to find the picture, and this is where I've ended up finding so many of the other things. I take screenshots whenever I see things. I'm like, oh, yes, this would be really great for, as a to remember for someone when it comes to work. And so I have a screenshot of it's a clothing label and it's a cactus. And it's like, this is what like that clothing label can feel like for that person. It's like a cactus constantly like pricking their skin. So it's not just with self-care though, because it could be a sound in the environment that is impacting their behavior, like at a restaurant. So I would say if you're seeing a behavior, and I say behavior, an action, um, that is impacting them to do something, it could be sensory. It may not be, but it could be. And then if it's really impacting the family's ability to do anything and impacting that individual like throughout the day, then it's something to look at. But I would highly recommend, honestly, sorry, either um, watching a webinar that we have in our resource library, look at our sensory resources, or even the mental wellness book that is free in our resource library has an entire chapter on sensory processing. Those are good places to start. If I don't know how old your loved one is, but seeking out occupational therapy because they can help you understand if it's sensory processing or not as well.
Thank you. With toileting, can you provide some more details on how to check with a mirror?
Yeah, so I think the great thing would be to have, if you can, almost like a full-size mirror in the bathroom, or if like you already have like a big enough mirror around the sink, but they're gonna want to look like honestly like in their butt crack and make sure, or also make sure they haven't smeared it across their butt because we see that too. So they just want to look and see. You can also, if you had to, put like a mirror on the floor and they could kind of like squat over it, or you could use like that multi, kind of like that picture of the mirror when someone was looking at the back of their hair, a mirror like that with three sides so that like they can kind of, like turn and look, but see in a different mirror so that, because it can be kind of hard. It's a visual processing thing to actually look in the mirror and make sure you're seeing what you're supposed to be seeing. So having more access to mirrors. Um, yeah, a mirror can also help with tampon training too. Um, I don't know.
Thank you. Do you have any tips for rubbing the scalp with enough pressure to clean hair with when shampooing?
Yeah, so again, you might want to try the hand under hand or hand over hand so that you can gauge how much pressure they're providing. But then those scalp scrubbers, because even if they're just barely holding the scalp scrubber, just the fact that there's nubs on the scalp scrubber is going to provide more pressure, even if they're barely providing pressure on themselves. So that's what I would recommend.
Thank you so much. Um, so this is going to be our last question. I'm sorry that we weren't able to get to all of them, but please feel welcome to look at the resources in our resource library and contact us if you have any additional questions. Um, have I just lost my question. Sorry. Th this individual's son doesn't like electric razors. Do you have any recommendations for razors that are better than others?
Unfortunately, I do not. Um, Sorry, I honestly don't do a lot with shaving. I'm not gonna lie. Uh, Mostly just because people don't ask me. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. I actually have one other thought. We often post about personal hygiene on our Facebook page and Instagram, and wonderful families put in their ideas and their suggestions. So if you don't follow us on Instagram or Facebook, please do. You might find some suggestions from other families. And we also just want to thank you again for joining us today. We are able to offer these webinars free of charge through the generosity of donors. And so if you're interested in supporting our mission, please see our giving page. And thank you again to Katie and for all of you for attending. Bye.